Well, hey, North Shore Life Groups, Wolfgang here. And as you probably know, I love my teaching role here on staff and love to get to serve and help with things like Alpha. But another part of my job description is I get to help lead our care and support teams here at North Shore. It includes our prayer ministry, our different kinds of crisis response ministries, counseling, all these different sorts of things. And as we kick off this new series called Let's Talk About It, what we want to do a little different through this after-party experience is have a conversation within our life groups about how we can be, as groups, the first responder, if you will, when it comes to care and support in each other's lives. And we've got an incredible network of one-to-one caregivers that meet with people that are in acute or challenging circumstances. We have an amazing team of pastoral staff that meet with folks and care for them. A number of great groups that exist to help deal specifically with care and support kinds of themes and issues. And of course, a really outstanding network of counselors in our region that we can help connect people with. And yet, what we've found is that often this kind of a setting in a group is actually the best place for people to just receive the kind of care that we all need in life. And so rather than try to train the leaders and ask them to pass it along to you, we want to come straight to you through the beginning of this series to help equip you to do this well as a group. One of my good friends is a counselor, and he always says, if people had friends, we'd be out of business as counselors. Now, he's being a little self-effacing, of course, because there are times when we need professional therapists, and they have a level of training and expertise that can help us go deeper in the ways that we need to. But very often, what we really need is people that listen, people that care, people that see us in our struggle and are willing to join us there empathetically to be the support that we need. That's a critical piece of mental health, is connection and community. And the enemy of health is isolation. And yet that's our primary instinct, isn't it? Whenever we have struggles of whatever kind. We don't want to tell others because we're afraid what they'll think, or we withdraw because we're not even sure what to say or how to feel about it. What we need, though, is the exact opposite. And so what I want to do is kind of coach you as a group on how to be that support for one another. Because you think about all those times in the Bible that encourage us to be one another's support, to love one another, to pray for one another, to bear one another's burdens. We cannot do this alone. We need each other. Now, I'm guessing maybe you're sitting there thinking, well, why do we need to talk about this? As a life group, we're already fantastic at this. Maybe you've known each other a long time, or maybe you're relatively new as a group, but you've still built a deep connection and relationship. And yet, inadvertently and even well-intentionally, if that's even a word, we can create a space that isn't as safe as we think it is for people to share. Scott talked a little bit about this on Sunday. We have this impulse to want to fix or to give advice or to minimize when people are struggling or dealing with different issues. But yet those issues can have more of a negative impact than a positive one. So when someone is vulnerable in your group, here's just kind of a general motto, a rule of thumb for this entire experience. Don't fix it, feel it. Don't fix it, feel it. Instead of responding with wise advice on what a solution might be or what they need to do to fix the situation, just feel it with the person. Just be willing to be quiet for a minute and listen, to hear what they have to say, to ask a great open question like, tell me more. It's one of my favorite questions in ministry and in pastoral counseling. Tell me more. It's just an invitation for people to open up and share what's going on without you quickly trying to solve it or quickly trying to tell some story of how you had a similar experience and what you did that made it all better. Sometimes all we need to know is that somebody cares. So don't fix it, feel it. That can be the most powerful thing of all. So in these next few weeks, what I want to touch on are what are sometimes called relational nutrients. They come from a book called People Fuel, written by Dr. John Townsend. He's a fantastic Christian psychologist. He's written many, many wonderful books, but this one in particular I found super helpful, these relational nutrients. And the idea is, just like with food, we need basic nutrients like calcium and iron and zinc and vitamin C or whatever else. You know what I'm talking about. Just like we need those physically to be healthy, there are relational nutrients that we need to be psychologically and emotionally healthy. And he really divides these into 4 quadrants. I want to talk about them over the next several weeks, but I want to talk specifically about this first one because I think it's the hardest for most of us. The 4 main categories are this. The first is to be present. The second category is to convey the good, to encourage. The third category is to provide reality. It's to give feedback or thoughts. And the fourth category is call to action, some next step. Now, I know our impulse is to want to jump to those last 2, but I want us to focus tonight on being present, just listening. Because I think it's the first and the most important step, and yet it's the one we're typically the worst at. So what's it look like to be present? Well, here's a few of the things it means. First, it means something like acceptance. This is the opposite of criticism or judgment. It's just saying you belong here, even in your mess, even in your imperfection. I want you to know we are so glad you're here. I'm so glad you opened up. Thank you for saying something about this struggle. Sincerely accepting and embracing them into the group. You are wanted. It's connection without judgment. And you can give that to each other and create the kind of safe space where people can open up. Another be present concept is simply attunement. And that's just meeting people where they are, getting into a rhythm. If someone is down and heavy-hearted, don't come at them in some up-tempo way, try to be like their cheerleader or whatever. Join them in that place. It's responding to what another is experiencing, to kind of get in that darkness with them and being aware of what it is that's happening emotionally in their lives. Another way to be present is validation. It's conveying to that person that their experience is significant and should never be dismissed. I mean, sometimes we'll do this thing where we try to downplay things to make somebody else feel better. Oh, no, that doesn't sound that bad. It's not that big a deal. Get over it. It wasn't as bad as you're making it sound. Why don't you just focus on something else? Those words can be incredibly hurtful and communicate this is not a safe place to open up. And I hope those kinds of words will never come out of any mouths in any North Shore life groups. Instead, what should come out of our mouths is things like, that sounds so hard. That sounds so hard. You're carrying so much right now. I'm so glad you opened up. So there's acceptance, there's attunement, there's validation, there's identification. And be really careful here. This isn't about you sharing an example of how you went through the same exact thing they're going through. If you do any of this, make sure it's only very brief, a sentence or two. In our marriage, let's say, if someone in our group opens up about a marital struggle, to be able to say, Lori and I went through a really hard time in our marriage, and we know how tough that can be. And I'm so glad you opened up because that helped us as well. Something simple, brief, that doesn't make it about you, but keeps the focus on them, lets them know that they're not alone. Another one is the idea of containment. That's the idea of allowing another person to vent, to kind of let out what's inside them without trying to edit them, staying warm, and not overreacting. See, to tell them, it's okay, because sometimes people will start to talk and they say, no, I'm sorry to burden you guys with this. I don't want to say anymore. To be the person that says, it's really okay. Tell us what you're feeling. This is a safe place for that. That kind of validation, that kind of containment can let them know, even though they're dropping heavy things, you're there to carry it with them. So important. And then the last I want to touch on is just a simple idea of comfort. It's providing support in someone's loss. It's saying simple things like, I'm so sad that you're going through this. My heart hurts so bad for what you're dealing with right now. I'm so sad for what you're facing. Or to even just sit in silence and to just quietly be present with someone else. See, when you begin to work some of these things into your group, to resist this urge to fix it, and instead begin to just feel it, to listen, it begins to create a space where people can begin to open about the struggles that they may be dealing with, that we're hoping this series will help unearth and begin to allow God's healing to step in. So here's the challenge I have for you in the group tonight. Some of you, tonight, you need to talk. You need to open up about some struggle that you're experiencing right now. Quit pretending everything's okay and be honest about some way that you're wrestling. as Scott talked about on Sunday. But others of you tonight, you need to shut up. You need to resist that urge to fix it, to solve it, to compare and talk about your own experience. But instead, tonight needs to be a night for you to listen and for you just to be present, to work on acceptance and attunement and validation and identification and containment and comfort. You can do this, friends. We can be the kind of community that Jesus had in mind, where we are able to bear one another's burdens with the kind of mercy and grace that he has shown to us. It's our prayer that your group will be a beautiful example of that, and that those who are hurting or struggling in some way will find you as a group a safe place to be open. So I'm looking forward to what God continues to do through this series, to talking more next week about some of these other relational nutrients that God uses us to give one another. And I'm praying for you and your group through this experience. If we can help in any way, don't hesitate to reach out at care@northshore.church. We'll talk to you soon.